What I'm wanting you to get from this portion of the training is really a good visualization of what's going on underneath the skin. Because if you can feel a vein but you can't see it, then it's going to be a good stick and the patient's going to be very comfortable. You need to start getting used to seeing exactly how deep and how thick the skin is, and how deep the vein is, and how thick the vein itself is, based on your ability to feel. And with that, start taking a look at the length of your needle, how long your bevel is, and making sure that the bevel and the catheter are both introduced completely into the lumen of the vein so that you get a really comfortable insertion. So this first one is just a regular insertion, and what I'm wanting you to watch is the full insertion of the bevel, the introduction of the catheter itself, the needle flash, and then when you have a good stick, you're gonna get blood that comes back up into the hub of the needle first, and that's gonna be your needle flash. And all that means is that your bevel has been introduced into the lumen of the vein. Once the needle has guided the catheter itself past the wall of the vein and into the lumen, then when you start to remove the actual needle, you'll get a flash of blood into the catheter, which will tell you that you're solidly into the vein. Now, if you get your needle flash but you don't get your catheter flash, what we'll see later on is that you may have gone through the vein, which is when we're talking about watching how deep your needle is versus how deep you think or know the tissue and the vein itself are. That'll help you be really good at this. For deep veins, what you're looking at is the angle of the needle. So you're gonna start at a much sharper angle, and then you'll level out and get a little bit flatter in order to get the catheter threaded and introduced. And you see your catheter flash and you see your needle flash. Shearing. So this is something that I want to make sure that you guys don't do. When you start to extract the needle and you don't see your catheter flash, sometimes what people will try to do is put the needle back in and then push the catheter into the vein. What can end up happening is you end up punching the needle through a bend in the catheter, and then trying to extract that needle and that catheter that has been damaged out through the skin is very uncomfortable for the patient. Once you've started to remove that needle, you better be very sure that the catheter is in the lumen of the vein. The other thing that can happen if you try to go back and forth once you've started to extract the needle is shearing. So you actually can shave off a piece of the inside of the catheter, and if that happens, then you end up with a very emergency type situation. So you'll end up having to tourniquet the patient's arm off and then take them to the ER, because if that little tiny piece of plastic ends up getting caught somewhere critical, then you can end up with a big problem for a patient. This is one of the reasons that when you are doing your charting, you want to make sure that when you've extracted the catheter at the end of the IV, that you're looking at the tip of the needle of the catheter itself and saying, okay, the catheter is intact. Because if it's been split or if it looks like it's been shaved, then you need to watch that patient for a potential blockage. Hematomas can be caused by a couple of different things. They can either be caused here, where you see this picture where the bevel was inserted partially into the vein, but what will happen here is if the bevel is only partially in the vein and then you add any sort of suction, or the vein is very weak, what it can mean is that the hematoma, the blood will leak from the vein into the surrounding tissue and you'll get a big bulge, and that can be really uncomfortable for the patient. What this also means is that you didn't get your catheter in, so you probably need to start over again. A hematoma that happens on the underside of a vein isn't as big of a problem because you can actually save the stick. So you've introduced the catheter into the vein, and you may have even introduced the catheter all the way through the vein. But what it means is that when you take your needle out, you can actually ease the catheter back, and the catheter will come out into the vein and then actually fall easily into the vein where it can be advanced and your IV line can be attached.